And so it's critical. It's more important than people would ever realize of getting clear, because what happens is if your vision is to ever go on vacation or step away from your business, your team will start to operate based off of a value system when you're gone, right? They go to their default. Many times it's their default. It's their values. And so if you didn't clarify values and hire people based off of what your core values are, they're going to go to some other values and they're going to make decisions based on those values. And it's going to be decisions that are the way you wouldn't make them. And it creates chaos in businesses.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited today because hearing my voice, we got a special treat. Okay, a special treat. You know, they say that in life, you have top 3 favorite books or lifetime books that you will always remember, that you'll always go to. And I'm so excited because we have one of my top 3 books today and top 3 offers with me. Oh my gosh, you guys know Mike McCallitz, and you'll know number 2, and then you'll have to guess who number 3 is. But I am so excited because today we have Skylar Lewis here with us. And Skylar is the author of this amazing book right here, The 2-Day CEO. Now, how many of us want to be 2-day CEOs? I wish I could be a 2-day CEO. I haven't got there yet. But, you know, his amazing book really talks about that. But besides being an author and a family man, Skylar's actually very, very special because he actually runs 2 multi-million-dollar companies, 2 of them, grew them from scratch and literally built them up. And today I'm really excited because he is going to share his special tidbits of wisdom. And I actually got some things, Skylar, from your book that I want to share with our audience. And by the way, you guys need to go and order this book. Go to Barnes & Nobles, wherever your local bookstore is, and order this book. I was telling Skylar today, I was like, you know, this book has been with me on trains, planes, and automobiles. Like literally, like I was like devouring this book. It was so good. And I was in hotel lobbies waiting for people reading this book and just highlighting things. That's how like so juicy it is. And it talks about things that, you know, people don't talk about. Please join me in welcoming Skylar Lewis to our platform. Hey, Skylar, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. That was a fantastic intro. Thank you. Super sweet.
Well, you know, I am super excited to have you. Oh my gosh, this book was such a, you know, it's endearing just how it's written and it's your story and it's your life, but it's really also endearing because, you know, it's not a conversation that us entrepreneurs have. There's not a lot of people around us that, you know, especially when you're scaling, especially as you're crossing that 7-figure line, that can really talk about these things. So thank you so much for sharing your story so vulnerably with us.
Mm-hmm. Right. It was a lot of trial and error for me. And I kind of talk about that in the book of just the journey of figuring out how do you get there, right? How do you go build a company? How do you scale a company? Right. I didn't go get my MBA. I was not a pro at scaling. So I had to figure it out through coaches, through seminars, through all kinds of stuff, through a lot of trial and error. And yeah, I think I found a great recipe for doing it effectively. And that's what we teach on.
I love it. And, you know, I love the little picture that Skylar puts in his book of his house growing up. And I know you guys aren't going to be able to see it. You're going to have to buy the book to look at page 14. But, you know, it's a really humble beginning. And, you know, I love the story, Skylar, that you share about, you know, mentors and particularly how you met one of your first mentors, Joe, in the book. And you got there, as you call it, from dropping in from a restaurant. You know, it was a break-in. It was a break-in at the age of 15, not necessarily to steal, but to, you know, cook yourself a meal at your favorite restaurant. And it ended up being the biggest blessing, not that you broke in, but the person that you met who really was just gracious towards you. Skylar, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, your companies, and your start?
Yeah, that picture of my house, it was interesting. I actually went out there about 2 weeks ago. It's in California. I moved to Dallas about a year ago. And I went out there, we were shooting a little documentary. And so I brought my camera guy out there and went and checked out that house. And I love a good, kind of comeback story or, you know, just starting from the beginning, just that struggle. And so I was hoping there would be something that would portray that. And there was this guy riding on a little motorcycle right by the house. It was up in the dirt area of the hills kind of. And I went and talked to him and I stopped him. I said, "Hey, so how's the neighborhood?" And I was just curious, hoping to get something good. And he gave me what I wanted. He's like, "Honestly, it's you know, it's not that bad. Just a lot of tweakers and homeless people." Then I was like, yes. And that was what I needed for my documentary. No, so it just shows like I grew up in that area, right? I struggled. I grew up poor on the poorer side of town. And I just always had this vision of creating success, you know, and I think it was because of where I grew up. I knew there was something more. I just knew there was a lot more to life that could be had. And so I had this vision. I remember sitting up in my bedroom, just thinking about what could be possible in my life. if I just found a way out of the town that Hemet, California was where I grew up. And so, yeah, just started at the humble beginnings, ended up making some bad decisions and got arrested, which I talk about in the book. Met some pretty powerful mentors and then started a journey of just entrepreneurship. Like I realized business was my path that I wanted to take and that would create some of the freedom that I was looking for. But like I talk about in the book, it's, hey, entrepreneurship, it's not actually easy. Most people are actually tied and chained to their businesses. Their vision was to start a business to create freedom and wealth. Now they're literally chained to it. And people that have kind of regular jobs are more present with their family than they are with businesses, right? That's always on their mind. And so it's kind of backwards. You think it'll give you the freedom, it actually chains you up. But if you do it the right way, you can break those chains. And that was a lot of my journey, is figuring out, like, once I got chained, I realized this is really taking away from my family, the most important things in my life, really. So I got to find a way out.
I love it. And you had a pretty young start. So after you met your mentor, Joe, and he kind of adopted you because Joe was the restaurant owner, for you guys that have read the book. And he said to Skylar, hey, you can make up for breaking into my restaurant. You can work for me for the summer. And it was interesting because Joe kind of took Skylar under his wings. He started saying, this is how I run the business, and just kind of giving him vision that he didn't have growing up. And I love the story that you learned about, you went to school and you got your first job. And he was a teen, Skylar was a teen, and he went to work for one of these wholesale companies and he got discounts on purchasing candy bars. And this candy bar business ended up turning into an empire in his high school. And you learned a really important lesson with that, Skylar. I'm going to let you share that story because a lot of our entrepreneurs are facing this on a bigger scale now.
Yeah. It was funny. I worked at Smart and Final, and then I was able to get candy pretty cheap, like Little Debbie cupcakes. And so I knew people were hungry before lunch. So one day I brought a duffel bag full of them and just offered them for $1 each and sold out. And then I brought more and more, and I eventually found other freshmen that would go sell them for me. So I brought a bunch of bags and had a whole crew of people that would sell it and bring back the money, inside the school. It was super successful. And then, I got shut down by the school, whoever the people are that are in charge of the candy sales at school ended up shutting me down. And I realized I learned a couple good lessons. One is people are critical, right? To have a successful business, like, people are a must. And yes, it can be very challenging to manage and lead people. However, that's where the leverage is. That's where you eventually will get your freedom. Without people, you're going to really struggle finding that freedom. It's people and processes. And so having people and having quality people, which is, I talk a lot about the process of hiring and developing people in the book. It's a critical, and I learned that early on. I realized, wow, I could sell it myself, or I can get a bunch of other people to also sell for me. And I learned that I think it was 15 or 16, and it was a powerful lesson.
It was amazing. And the story is the principal shut it down because he was competing against the school vending machines, because I guess he brought better snacks and everybody was like selling these snacks for Skylar. So it was a very interesting thing. And so many lessons in that. One, the leverage people. The other one was, when something gets taken away, it's not the end of the world, right? It's time to start something else and take those lessons that you've learned. I really like your chapter about values. And it really was about, first of all, everybody has their own values, but it was about really knowing your values as you hire, because, if you don't know your values, then your values quickly become, the values of everybody around you. And tell us about values. Tell us about, how do you discover those values? How do you communicate your values to your staff, to your team? Because I felt like you did a really great job with that in the book.
Yeah, we've kind of mastered that at Superior Restoration, which is my company out in California. That was something that I just committed to early on, was figuring out like what our core values were as a company. And it's funny because a lot of people say, yeah, I have core values picked out, right? A, many times they don't even know their core values. And B, their team usually never knows their core values. So we have 42 employees at Superior Restoration, and every single one of them knows our core values. Comment, collaborate, own it, mindfulness, efficiency, and thirst for learning. And so those are our 5 core values. And so it's critical. It's more important than people would ever realize of getting clear, because what happens is, if your vision is to ever go on vacation or step away from your business, your team will start to operate based off of a value system when you're gone, right? They go to their default. Many times it's their default. It's their values. And so if you didn't clarify values and hire people based off of what your core values are, they're going to go to some other values and they're going to make decisions based on those values. And it's going to be decisions that are the way you wouldn't make them. And it creates chaos in businesses. And so if you can have core values and then hire based off those core values, right? So one of ours is collaborate. During the interview process, we ask, hey, we don't say, hey, how collaborative are you? And everybody's going to say, oh, I'm very collaborative. But we say, hey, tell me about a time when you did a project. Did you prefer to do it by yourself or with other people? Right. And so we'll ask questions where there's maybe story based to where we can get the answer. Is this person collaborative? Is this person efficient? Is this person mindful? Do they have a thirst for learning? Right. I did an interview recently for an executive assistant, and I was asking, I wanted to find out if they had a thirst for learning value. And so I asked, when was the last book you read? And she's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, do you read? She's like, kind of. Okay. Have you ever been to a personal development seminar? No. And I was just digging. I could not find anything on the personal growth and thirst for learning. So I realized at that point, she doesn't match our value system. And we hire based off of values. So didn't end up hiring her based off of that and a couple other things. And then we also fire based off core values. So if someone's not showing efficiency or mindfulness, we'll coach them and then eventually move on, because we want all of our team members to be in alignment with our core values. And so while you're building them, you may eventually have to filter out people that don't match those. And that may be what is creating some of the chaos that some people have in their businesses. Some of the struggles, some of the balls that are getting dropped is they're just not in alignment with where you're going and your value systems.
I love that. And it's interesting because, one of the things that Skylar did was, he made a decision that he was going to have multiple companies, and, he's got multi-million-dollar companies today. And, you can't be in a 40-hour desk job if you're going to run multiple companies. And so he made a decision that he was going to be a 2-day CEO because he had a bigger impact that he wanted to have in his life. And what he did was, he actually moved away from his company. Like, it was like over an hour drive. He took his wife and his children to the ocean, and they moved by the ocean in California. And, a lot of what gave him that ability to step away was creating that foundation of, hiring people that have the same values. And tell us about that step, Skylar, because, a lot of us CEOs that's the dream life. That's what we wish we could do, but we don't even know where to begin. And we're afraid the whole ship will kind of sink if we kind of walk away. So Skylar, tell us about that journey.
Yeah, there's a couple pieces that need to be in place, right, to be able to kind of make that happen. One of them is really getting the right people in place. That's one thing, right? The right team members, and getting the wrong team members off the bus that are not the right long-term fits. And then the second thing is processes, right? Really getting clear on your processes. Like, I look at business as a machine. Like, we have to start building this business in a way where it can operate consistently and predictably. Like, each of our processes, or you can think of McDonald's. It's amazing. McDonald's, I share this at one of my seminars. It's a multi-million-dollar restaurant that is ran by 21-year-olds, right? Can a 21-year-old run your company right now? And restaurants are complicated. If anyone has ever owned a restaurant, they're very complicated. You're dealing with young staff. It's a freaking nightmare. Yet a 21-year-old could run it because they did such a good job at processes and developing systemization in the business. And so that should be a key focus for owners. So you get that in place, and then you get a number two. All right, you get that key person that you're developing, that's a solid A player, not like a B or a C player. Your number two needs to be an A player. You have the processes, you have some of the right people, you have an A player. Even if the business isn't perfect, you can kind of start to step away. And that was my journey. I actually moved to the beach, and then I started working 1 day a week less. And I realized I could get as much work done in 4 days that I could in 5 days if I was really focused. And it was amazing. I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. And then I eventually I said, if I can do it in 4 days, I wonder if I could run the business in 3 days. And then I just fit everything into those 3 days that I did. And I thought, okay, cool. I think I can do 2 days. And so I started doing 2 days, and I did 2 days for 5 years, 2 days a week. And then COVID hit, then I went to 1 day. And then I'm like, you know what, if I can do this 1 day, I can do it in a different state. So I moved to Texas a year ago, and I've been running it about 1 hour a week. I have my executive team call today. It's a 1 hour call, and I do this once a week. And the business is like, we're having a more profitable year this year than we did even last year. And so that's what's possible when you have the right people and you really take care of them, and then you get the right processes in place. But I think that first step is, right, starting to step away from the business to start to trust your team to make the right decisions.
Oh yeah. And you've made some hard decisions along the way. I'm from, letting people go. A lot of people are afraid to let people go. They don't want to
Hmm.
be nice. They don't want to give the negative feedback. They don't want to go with the gut feeling. And Skylar, you had a significant lesson that you learned very early on in your business. You had someone that you trusted. I believe it was an office manager, and just didn't have a gut feeling that things were going right with that. And it turned out that that gut feeling was absolutely true. And I think you found out after you terminated her, just based on your gut feeling. But I'm going to let you tell that story about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't mention her name in the book, but her name's was Nicola, her actual name. But she ended up, we had an office manager and we felt like we trusted her. We trusted her about, I would call it 95%, right? Almost all the way. But then me and my wife, we were on a cruise and I was talking with Jessica and I said, you know what, babe? Like, I don't fully trust Nikki. I don't know what it is. There's just something about her, like that's a little off. And I said, do you feel that way? And she said, yeah, I actually kind of feel that way also. So I said, okay, well, I don't want to build our company and build this foundation on people that we don't fully trust. We have to fully trust them. Like we have to know our instincts are usually right in this arena. And so I said, I think we should move on from her. And so she was on board. So as soon as we got back from the cruise, ended up letting her go. And then about 2 weeks, I think 2 to 3 weeks later, my office lady, Stephanie, who was my assistant, moved into the office manager role. And she came into our office and she was just kind of freaking out. She's like, I don't know what's going on, but I've been calling customers and all of them have said they have already paid us, but I have no record of payment for any of them. And so we went and dove in and found out that Nikki or Nicola had created her own PayPal account called Superior Cleaning and was collecting money from all the clients. She would call them and say, hey, our credit card processor is down, but we have a PayPal account set up under this, so you can just pay it through here. And so she was collecting all the money. She'd be doing it since she started with us. As soon as she had access to it, she had been stealing for like over a year. And we had let her watch our son. I mean, we kind of had put a lot of trust in her. She was running the company to where we could go on vacation. We thought we had finally done it, right? We're like, cool, we built this thing. It was just about 2 years into the business. And it was a huge learning lesson that like, right, move on from people if you don't trust them. Like trust your gut. If there's something that you don't trust about the person, your instincts are usually right in this arena. Like have a conversation or move on. And I was sharing with you, Susanne, just before that I'm building another building on our property. We have 16 acres here in Dallas. And I was meeting with the builder and I met with the builder, the project manager, the director of construction who manages all the project managers. And as we were done doing the walkthrough, he said, hey, you know what? I don't know if we can meet the price that you're looking to do this at. But he said, I actually have a side construction company that I do stuff on the side. And instead of bringing it through the main company, like, I'll just do it for you. Like, I'll hook you up, man. And I'm like, you mother effer, right? You shady guy. And so it pissed me off. I'm going to go actually talk to the owner and let him know that he has a team member that's stealing his business. And so that's what happens when you hold on to people that you don't fully trust or there's just something off about them. So that was one big lesson. And the second lesson is don't take your hands off the wheel too fast, right? Make sure you do have some things in place. And then the third lesson is like, it actually was a huge blessing. So life happens for us, not to us, was the biggest blessing that I got from that. Because initially I was a victim to that. I'm like, how could somebody steal something from me? It ended up turning out to be a huge blessing when I found out that I actually had responsibility for it. I hired her, right? I didn't do the proper background check. I didn't have checks and balances in place. I took my hands off the wheel too fast. I was actually responsible. I wasn't at fault, but I was responsible for what happened. And when I took responsibility, it freed me from the victim mentality. And I was able to actually like shift the way I operated from there forward. Pretty powerful moment for me, actually.
A very powerful moment. And there's a lot of times in your book where you talk about the first business that you acquired, the hot dog stand.
Uh-huh.
I'm an accountant, so I meet business owners that do that all the time. They like, I just love that idea, that concept. And they'll go out and buy a business. And I'm like, first of all, do you even know the revenue's real? I mean, have you looked at the bank statement and document those invoices against that? And you were a victim of that with one of your early on businesses. And one of the things that Skylar talks about as you're scaling and you're becoming that 2-day CEO, it's about creating things that allow you just to do an eye glance at metrics to see how things are going, creating those KPIs and those metrics that, I was like so motivated by his book. I was like, oh, let me go revamp our metrics, because it was just so motivating. But, and that's just part of becoming that 2-day CEO is creating those metrics so that you can eyeball how your business is doing and really be able to trust your people with that. Another part of the book that really stood out to me, Skylar, was I told you I like digested it. I like read every word. I told you it's like my top 3 books now. One of the things that you talked about is when you met your mentor, one day you just didn't feel very well, and you didn't have the energy because it does take a lot of energy to run a scaling company, especially one that's growing extremely fast. And I remember the mentor looking at you and looking at was it a Diet Coke that you had? And he goes, no wonder, you are what you eat, right? Are you exercising and things like that? And just a story about that personal accountability that is not just about what you're doing, it's what you're feeding yourself to. And I love the spiritual perspective that you had in your book too. Skylar, if you want to just talk about that a little bit, just, that side of business that I call the dark side of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think it's so many people where we're just so focused on our businesses that we don't focus on ourselves, and we're not doing the right things to take care of ourselves. And so I have another company called Rise Up Kings and my wife with Rise Up Queens. And a big part of that is our 4 pillars: faith, family, fitness, and finance. And so part of living an exceptional life is making sure you're staying balanced. There's no such thing as perfect balance, right? However, you can be intentional in each of these pillars, right? In your faith, whatever that means for you, right? In your family, like investing regularly with your wife and your kids, or your spouse and your kids. Your fitness, faith, family, fitness, and finances, right? Your fitness, that's critical. Eating healthy and taking care of your body. I'm a huge proponent of daily exercise and eating healthy, like whatever that means for you. Like when I eat a big lunch, guess what happens?
I know it happens to me. I fall asleep.
Yeah, I get tired and I know it, right? It's like, why am I doing that? Like if I want to be a high performer, why am I sabotaging my body to lose energy right after lunch? So it's like what I personally do is I just eat low carbs. So I'll eat, like today I had some brisket and veggies in the morning, and then I had fish and veggies for lunch, and then I'll usually eat carbs for dinner. So that helps me stay high energy all day, so I can be focused and have mental clarity, like while I'm working. I mean, you can have it all, right? You could have the successful company, but if your marriage is broken, or you're in the hospital with cancer, or you're struggling with energy, and it's just not worth it. So we really need to be intentional in each of these areas of those 4 pillars to really live a life where we can have a lot of peace and abundance in each area.
I love it. So Skylar, we're a profit first channel. So at the end of the day, we love talking profits. One of the things, thank you. One of the things that always comes to me, especially with people in the trades, and I know that your first business was a business in the trades. It was a 2-part business. It had a restoration services, it had cleaning services. And one of the struggles that I see in businesses that have a lot of, especially like cleaners or even construction, there's this fear of charging what you're worth, right? And I know that, Skylar, you surround yourself with A players, and A players are not cheap by any means. They're going to be the more pricier, especially in this economy. Tell me, what do you do in order to balance that profitability, right? With the same time, recruiting the best and the brightest with that?
I think a big part of charging what you're worth. I mean, with our company, Rise Up Kings, it's like, so to work with me, right? It's $5,000 a month for 2 phone calls. So I'm not the cheapest, but I provide a lot of value, right? And so I had to get to that place eventually where I knew I was able to provide maximum value. And so many people are afraid to charge what they're worth. And that's one part. But the second part is we got to make sure we're providing maximum value too. So like at our event that we run, we have a 3-day really intense event for men, and my wife does it with women. And we maximize value, meaning we send them a whole gift box before the event. They show up to the event. We give them free gear. We give them a backpack. We give them a mug. We take them on 12 different experiences through the whole event. We're driving around places where we do a cool graduation. We have high-end food the whole time. I mean, we like maximize value. And so I can't stress that enough. Like, what can you do for your customers to go above and beyond to create an exceptional experience where they walk away and they're like, wow. Right. And so when you're doing that too, you have more comfort around charging what you're worth. And so I'm all about that. So many people are not really charging. I would say it's more rare that people overcharge on things that, right, they're not really providing value. It's more common that people undercharge. I mean, in every industry, they're not aware of the value that they provide. I don't have any special nuggets around that, but I'm all about maximizing value. Like, what can you do in your industry or your business to do something that's above and beyond what anybody else? How do you provide more value than anyone else does in your industry is a great question to journal on and to kind of think like, how do I provide more value than anyone else in my industry? Right. And then how do I charge for that?
I love that. How do you provide more value? And I'll tell you, Skylar does a lot of journaling from what I can tell from reading his book, but it definitely brings out deep thought. So it definitely works for those of you guys who are fans of journaling with that. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was, one of the ways that you shared your lessons were through the mistakes that you made in your business. And what is your biggest regret?
I've done a lot of stupid stuff, but I would say the stupidest thing I did wasn't related to business. It was before me and my wife, we got married. I'd committed that I was going to be with her forever and only her. So we were dating, and I ended up cheating on her. Right. So that was a very emotional and challenging thing to kind of go through. And that caused a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. And so I would say that's probably my biggest regret, is having to kind of go through that and create that pain. But also on the other side, like, our relationship and the depth of our intimacy is just like off the charts. And I believe part of that played to the work that we did around all of that. So there's always a double-edged sword, and there's always two parts to it. If I was to say anything that I specifically regretted, it would probably be that. Just a lot of unnecessary, pain and challenges in the relationship. But I now am able to serve a lot of other people that have gone through experiences like that, where they've either been cheated on or there's been infidelity. And so I'm able to serve like a huge amount of people because of that experience. Just that mindset I've had, which really has served me, is life happens for me, not to me. So many people think life happens to you, right? The economy is happening to them. Their wife or husband cheated on them. It's happening to them. Everything's happening to them, as opposed to for them. Like, hey, there's a blessing in this. Where is that blessing? There's always some purpose that's going to be tied to the pain. There's purpose in the pain. And so when we have that mindset, we'll find the purpose. But as long as we're a victim to whatever happened, and that's a strong word, we get stuck. We get stuck and we're not able to break free and see the blessing, as long as we just see ourselves as the victim to the situation. So yeah, that was kind of a big takeaway I've taken from some of those life lessons.
Definitely. I'll tell you, like, when I was reading your book, if I was having a pity party and I was like, if Skylar can get up and get over himself and try it again, I was like, I definitely can do that too. So lots of like real lessons, just failing forward really is really what it is, and learning some really amazing, valuable lessons.
I share that stuff because so many people, we're in a Facebook society, right? It's always sharing the good things. Business is freaking challenging, right? It's hard. It's challenging. You have people quit on you. You have the wrong people. Clients, leave you. Lawsuit, just all kinds of challenges. And I wanted to share those stories just because it's just more real. It's like, that's the reality of business. It's not easy, but it's so worth it. I once heard business is one of the best personal development programs out there. Like, meaning there's so many lessons in business that you have to learn to get through it, or you're a victim to all of it, or it's the biggest personal development program or the most effective you could ever go through. I'm a huge fan of business, and all the pain and struggle that comes along with it just makes us stronger and more effective. And so I like to share those stories, the struggles.
Definitely. And more stories like this need to be shared, because I would say probably the biggest hurdle for me in my business was, having to figure out, is this normal? Like your example with your office manager. Luckily you and Jessica, you guys both had that gut feeling. You had each other to kind of go back. But a lot of times people will go, maybe I'm being too picky. Maybe I'm, doubting myself. And so you end up allowing things to continue on when it shouldn't be continuing on, and you end up not being a 2-day CEO, but a 7-day CEO.
You get stuck, right? When you have C players are not D players. So D players, you already moved on from. They're the ones that were just horrible people, right? Not the right people. C players, they're the ones that do just enough to not get fired. They're the ones that you're just like, they're hanging in there like, but they're not that bad. But the C player keeps you from winning the championship. Like, if we're trying to build Super Bowl teams, like really go win, you don't build a Super Bowl team by having a bunch of C players. That you have to have the A players, and the A players will allow you to be free, because as long as you have C players on the team, C players are the ones that drop the ball. They miss details. They could be really nice, but they miss things. So you have to constantly keep checking in or checking their attitude, or, hey, is everything okay? Right? You have to really like manage and micromanage them and be on top of it. And there's no way you're going to gain freedom from the business if you have people like that on your team. Let them move on somewhere else, right? We're in such a hot economy, and it's just an amazing job market. I guarantee you, if you moved on from them, they'd probably go find a job making more money than they're making at your place. Like, that's just the way it is. So by you holding on to them, you're not doing them a favor. They could be an A player at some other smaller company, right? So you're actually preventing them from really stepping into a new role that they could maybe be thriving in. So if you have a C player on your team, I don't know, I would really look at that and just verify, like, are they the right long-term fit for the company?
Definitely. And also the lesson that you said, just have confidence in your decision too, because C players will make you feel like you're crazy, you're being too hard on everybody. So you got to be confident in your decision with that. So Skylar, how do you find your A players now? Because, that's your top 10%. How do you find enough of them to fill your company?
You have to clear out the seat first. So most people never find their A players because they have people in the seats already. And so as long as that person's in the seat, they're not going to do everything they can to find that person. So that would be number one. Like, honestly, like, you have to move on from the wrong fit. Otherwise, you will not give your all to find the A player. And then to find your A player, you got to have a good hiring process and a good hiring system. Like, what's your process to find that person? And so we're a big fan of DISC assessments. And so I actually have a link in my book where we offer some free ones, but there's DISC assessments. So like, I'll take you through this real quick. You got to have a good hiring process. So ours is, we do a first interview. We have specific questions we ask that person. Then if we like them, we send a DISC assessment and we see their personality, a personality profile, to see if they would match that role, right? For CPAs, you're a different type of CPA. Normally with CPAs, when I would do a DISC profile, it's going to be somebody that's low on the I, which is like your people, right? So you're a people person. I can tell you're very vibrant and have great energy. A lot of CPAs and bookkeepers, right, are more kind of toned down, and but that shows on their profile. So if I got your profile, I might not, right? I would say, okay, I'm gonna put you in the leadership, and I want you to grow this thing, right? Because you're like a leader and someone to grow, and then you have the bookkeepers that would manage it. So first interview, we have our interview questions, we have a personality profile, and then I have a second interview, and then we have a third interview. And so that way it gives us a full spectrum where they get to take off their interview mask and you get to see the real person by the third interview. And then a final one we do is, I love doing this, we take them out to dinner. So I usually take the person out with their spouse and go out to dinner or go to a lunch, and I get to know them a little bit more on their spouse. And you can learn a lot about somebody by meeting their spouse, a lot, if they're married. And so having a good interview process is a critical piece of the puzzle. Like, a lot of people wing their interviews. They don't have clarified questions. There's no system to it. They just kind of free flow on everything, and it's just not effective. So find out what questions get you the responses that you want, and then kind of follow some kind of process for your interviews.
That is really, really good, juicy morsels there. And Skylar is not mentioning this, but I'm going to talk about it from his book there too, because, that is a long interview process, especially right now during the economy where, it's the great resignation where A players go, like they went yesterday when you call them.
Yeah, luckily it's shifting. And so, like, it's interesting. I just hired an executive assistant. I did all that in 1 week. So you can get it all done in 1 week. You have to be much more efficient. Now you can't have it take 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, you can, but you may lose them. So you got to shorten that time frame, on those interviews. So,
oh yeah, you might as well get like a Airbnb next to your house and have them stay there so you can see them by day. Exactly. But one of the things that Skylar doesn't mention right now is, when I'm reading his book, he does a lot of things with his team, from having them at his house that he talked about in his book, to really that mentoring. And so, it becomes an employer choice, that if I work for you, you're going to develop me, and help me become a master at what we do. And, a lot of times people don't necessarily join a job because of the money. They join a job because of where they're going to grow and where they're going to develop to. And definitely there's many, many examples of Skylar, talking about how he simplifies things for his employees in order to create those processes that anybody can learn with that, and just that mentoring that he gives them. So I didn't want to mention that too. I told you I read that book.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think that's critical. The executive assistant that I just hired, she said the reason she's interested in coming to work for me is she wants to grow. She wants to learn. She wants to see. So the more we're learning and growing, right, the more we can hire really quality people that want to learn and grow. Because you cap people out, right? You're only going to be able to hire a leader that's as good as you typically. So you have to keep leveling up so you can hire better talent. If you're staying the same, you'll keep having the same issues that you keep having. But if you're developing your knowledge and you're learning and you're growing and you're becoming more effective, then you'll be able to hire higher quality people. So a lot of it has to do with you and books and seminars and coaching and, right, just kind of leveling up yourself.
And Stephanie, who replaced Nicola, because Stephanie was the secretary, she actually became the new office manager. Not just the office manager, but when the company grew into like multi-millions, she was the office manager. So, definitely a lot of development and growth went into that.
That's such a cool story. I love that. Right from being that assistant to helping to find out the embezzlement, and then going from office manager to operations manager to general manager, and now she's the VP of the company. And so that whole journey of developing her from the ground floor is just is so special. I love it. I love it that a woman's running my construction company too. So that's freaking awesome. She's a powerhouse. And actually, we're moving into for Rise Up Kings and Rise Up Queens. We just hired an operations manager. Her name's Jessica, and we started her from the bottom, and she's amazing. So women are powerhouses for sure.
Thank you. Like I said, if I could be a Rise Up King, I would be a Rise Up King. So how do we reach you? How do we contact you in order to learn more about you, to work with you? What is the best way to reach you?
The book is on Amazon if you want to learn more about kind of what we teach. And that same thing I teach to we have hundreds of people in our coaching program. And that's the same process we teach to help them scale their companies. So that's on Amazon, the 2-day CEO. And then it's also, you can go to riseupkings.com to check out our faith-based personal development events that we put on. And then also Facebook and Instagram, Skylar, Skylar, Lewis, Lewis. I'm usually posting and putting out some content.
Thank you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put Skylar's information onto our show notes. So you're going to be able to contact him and find him. And definitely check out this book, The 2-Day CEO. You can get it on Amazon. You can order from your bookstore, but definitely check it out. Like I said, I couldn't put the book down. I think I read this book like over 3 days, time to like hire somebody for Skylar. During this time, I read this entire book and it was amazing, just amazing pieces of morsel and just how he tells his story is just captivating. So you guys definitely must check out it. Thank you, Skylar, so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with all of our listeners and our viewers.
Yeah, no, I loved it. This was fun.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.